Imagine a normal morning. The sun is rising. People are opening their shops. Children are playing in the streets. A ship arrives at the harbor. At first, it looks ordinary. Nothing special. But inside that ship is something invisible. Something deadly. Something that will spread from one person to another. And before the world understands what is happening, lives begin to collapse. Families disappear. Cities panic. And history changes forever. So what was the worst day in human history? There is no easy answer. But one of the strongest candidates is the day humanity first came face to face with a disaster it could not see, could not stop, and did not understand. Today we are going back to one of the darkest moments ever lived by humans. It was the year 1347. Trade ships were moving across the Mediterranean. People were carrying goods, food, cloth, and animals from place to place. But one of those ships carried something far worse than cargo. It carried disease. When it reached port cities in Europe, people began to notice something strange. Sailors were sick. Many were already dying. Soon, the sickness spread into the city, and nobody knew how to stop it. This was the Black Death. And for the people living through it, it must have felt like the end of the world. The terrifying thing about this disaster was not just how deadly it was how little people understood it. There were no germ theories, no antibiotics, no modern hospitals, no real explanation. People looked for answers in the wrong places. Some thought it was punishment from God. Some thought bad smells in the air were causing it. Some blamed strangers, travelers, or entire communities. But none of that solved the problem. The sickness kept moving. It spread from house to house, from town to town, from country to country. And wherever it went, fear followed. The symptoms were horrifying. People developed fevers. They became weak. Pain spread through their bodies. In many cases, swollen lumps appeared under the arms, in the neck, or in the groin. That is why it was often called the plague. And once it entered a community, life could change in days. Markets emptied, churches filled, families locked their doors. Some people fled into the countryside. Others stayed and watched their neighbors disappear one by one. In some places, entire villages were nearly wiped out. People were not just fighting sickness, they were fighting panic. Because this was more than a disease. It was a breakdown of everything people depended on. When the sickness spread, workers disappeared. Farmers could not plant crops. Merchants could not trade. Doctors could not help. Priests could not explain. Leaders could not protect their people. Even the strongest cities were helpless. The world had never seen something spread so quickly and so widely. And the worst part was this. People had no idea when it would stop. But here is what makes this story even darker. The Black Death was not only a tragedy because of the people who died, it was a tragedy because of how unprepared humanity was. For the people living in 1347, the world suddenly became unsafe in the most basic way. Breathing near someone could be dangerous. Touching the wrong object could be dangerous. Traveling could be dangerous. Even being alive in the wrong place at the wrong time could be fatal. That is what made it feel like one of the worst days in human history. Not just the sickness, the helplessness. The plague did not destroy just one city. It spread across regions, across kingdoms, across continents. By the time it passed, millions of people were gone. Some historians estimate that huge parts of Europe lost a massive share of their population. Whole communities vanished. Land went uncultivated. Houses sat empty. The sound of daily life changed. The world became quieter. And after the plague, nothing felt the same. Surviving was not the end of the story. People who lived through the plague had to carry the memory of it. Imagine losing your family, your neighbors, and your entire village in one lifetime. Imagine growing up in a world that suddenly feels fragile. People changed after that. They thought differently about life, about death, about power, about religion, about medicine. A disaster like this does not just kill people, it reshapes the future. In a strange way, this terrible event pushed humanity forward. People began asking new questions. How does disease spread? Why do some people survive and others do not? How can cities protect themselves? These questions would take centuries to answer properly. But this was one of the moments that forced humanity to start looking more carefully at science, health, and public safety. Out of suffering came knowledge. Out of fear came progress. Not enough to erase the pain, but enough to change the future. Maybe it was the first day the plague reached a crowded city. Maybe it was a day when entire families realized the sickness had entered their home. Maybe it was the moment a harbor became the doorway to catastrophe. There may never be one perfect answer. History has seen war, famine, disaster, and disease. But if we had to choose one event that shows how fragile human life can be, the Black Death stands near the top. Because it reminds us of something simple and terrifying. Humanity can build cities. Humanity can cross oceans. Humanity can create empires. But one small invisible threat can still bring the whole world to its knees. So what was the worst day in human history? It may not be one single day. It may be every day when people suddenly realized their world was changing faster than they could understand. The Black Death was one of those moments. A moment when fear spread faster than hope. A moment when human weakness became painfully clear. And a moment that changed history forever. But it also taught us something important. Every great advance in medicine, science, and public health exists because humans learned from moments like this. We remember the darkest days not only because they were terrible, but because they show us how far we have come and how much we still need to protect one another. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe for more fascinating stories explained in simple ways. Thanks for watching.